Welcome to Savvy Business, Life Unscripted, with your host, Christina Rivera, where our guests share their wisdom and valuable business tips, empowering our audience to expand their personal potential.
Hi, Bobby Doss. Welcome to Savvy Broadcasting for our 10th annual Aviation Month. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
You betcha. You are the president and owner of United Flight Systems. We actually had the pleasure of meeting you a couple months back in the summer. You did some wonderful instruction and get people getting to know if they want to take flying lessons there. We are in Spring, Texas. So if anyone comes about Spring, Texas and wants to learn to fly and find out more about flying, check out unitedflight.com. But you have a very interesting story. Today we're going to talk about lessons from the cockpit, and you have only just gotten started in your flying career not that long ago in 2015. Share a little bit with our audience.
Yeah, so it's a long story, but I'll make it short. I have always wanted to fly. I grew up right by this airport, so I'm probably sitting less than 4 miles as the crow flies from where I was in kindergarten, first grade.
Wow.
And I heard the planes flying over every day, and always thought that would be so cool to fly. And for one reason or another that I'm sure impacts everyone's decision or choices to fly, money, time, family, whatever, I never got around to flying. Ultimately, my wife caved around 6 years ago, and she said, you can go take a flying lesson. So I went to United Flight Systems, walked in the door like everyone else does, and asked to take flying lessons. And a few years later, I was thinking about buying an aircraft and leasing it back to the school, which is something pretty common that aviators do. And I made the mistake of asking him how much he wanted for the whole thing. Obviously, it wasn't a mistake. It's been a great journey, and I get to literally do things that I'm passionate about every day.
Wow. And this is amazing. So you didn't just go from student to now pilot and then now owner of a flight school. How did that work out? It seems like that would be a heavy tax to pick up. I mean, how were you able to pick that up and make that happen?
Well, I guess I would attribute a lot of that. The opportunity, I guess, was taken by me. I took the chance. But cool. The mentors that I've had throughout my entire career have probably prepared me for this, and they might not have known it. I might not have known it, but I've been in sales and sales management, customer relations for a long time in corporate America. And I think it's a lot of similar things on a daily basis. It's just with an aviation theme.
Yeah, aviation bend. You know, it's interesting. I remember my mom saying that to me when I was younger, because I was taking a lot of music stuff, music, dance, all this stuff. And I went to school of performing arts, but my mom kept saying, can you just pick one thing and stick with it? You're just going to be a master of everything. And no, what do you call it? A jack of everything, or how does it go?
Something like a jack of all trades, a master of nothing.
That's it. But it's interesting. Just like you, what ended up happening is my singing career helped me now for the broadcasting I'm doing, and music, attentiveness, and focus. So it doesn't go to waste if you study a bunch of things. And it's interesting to see that your sales and what you did prior, you're able to apply it now to your new career.
For sure.
Yeah,
it definitely helps a lot.
Yeah. Now tell me, as you went through, I'm sure there were some scary times when you first got in that cockpit. And were there ever any times where you thought, oh, I can't hack this, or this is too hard?
Well, another odd thing was I was very scared when I first started flying. I probably was the yoke harder than anyone. Occasionally I'll fly with a first time pilot now, and I'll jokingly tell them they have to buy a new yoke because they left their fingerprints in it. So I completely relate to that anxiety and fear that people have in the cockpit, and often challenge people that are afraid to fly to come fly with us or fly with me. And I can really quickly educate them on how safe the aircraft is, what it's doing. I think the lack of knowledge in general by the general public, they don't know really what's happening or why accidents occur. I can say 99.9 times out of 100 it is human error, but I think that it is extremely safe, and people don't just realize how the wings work and how the plane's working. So, but for me, the biggest, scariest time I think I ever had, well, I had a near miss, and we can talk about that later on. I almost hit a helicopter that landed right in front of me, but that was way later in my career. Early on, my flight instructor wanted to show me that he could make the plane fly backwards, and I was perplexed by his comments, and we were in the West practice area. And now I know that it's a pretty common thing to do, but a Cessna 172 can probably not stall, meaning not stop going forward, probably at about 45 knots of indicated airspeed.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's probably about 50 miles an hour. And at altitude, the further away you get from the earth, the winds get stronger because there's nothing to slow those winds down. And so we were in the West practice area on a nice fall day, and it was really windy. And what we decided, or he learned, was that we probably had a 50 or 55 knot headwind at 3,000 or 4,000 feet. And so he wanted to show me that he could slow the plane down enough to where the plane would think it was moving forward, but in essence, the wind was actually pushing us backwards. So he asked me to look down at the ground, and I could see that we were in fact moving a little bit backwards very slowly, which made me freak out because I knew we were going to follow this guy then. But we didn't. And I think it's a pretty common thing. If you go to YouTube, you can find a lot of general aviation pilots making the plane fly backwards just because the winds are so strong at any given time.
Wow, I didn't know that that was even a possibility. Yeah, that is totally awesome. It's amazing how the stories, and I can relate to you too, because when I first got started, I was petrified. And the first time I went up, the only thing my flight instructor told me was make sure everything stays in the green. What the heck does that mean, stay in the green? I'm sitting there like, please stay on the green, stay in the green.
Yep. There's a lot of green too, so.
Yeah, it would be helpful if he gave me a bit more information, but it really is very, very safe. People aren't aware. I've now done over 350 hours. My husband flying, I'm sitting next to him. I'm very comfortable now in the airplane, but in the beginning I was not. So what was through teaching? Have you taught as well? Are you a CFI?
I'm working on my flight instructor certificate now. I'm not quite there yet. I've done about half the work to be able to earn that certificate. And the goal is to get it done before my birthday next year. So middle of next year, I hope to be finished.
Awesome. Awesome. So what is your greatest lesson you've learned so far in the cockpit that you could apply to everyday life?
Well, I think, wow, cockpit to everyday life, that's a big question. I think staying in front of the aircraft is something we hear a lot about as pilots or aviators. And in general, aviation using checklists and some of the safety things that aviation do, obviously people can incorporate it into their everyday life. But I think staying in front of the aircraft is one that pilots must do, and really why student pilots and newer pilots struggle so much with flying. It's not about holding the plane straight and level. It's about realizing that they're going to continuously move forward at 100 knots, and they've got to be thinking ahead of that aircraft. And as you get to faster, bigger aircraft, you've got to be thinking way, way out in front of it. And the more mature and skilled you become as a pilot, the further in front you can get. And that's what you see pilots doing today. So I think in life, it's the same way. I think the further I can stay out in front of the business plan for the flight school or the plan that I have for today or tomorrow, the better off I'm going to be. And so things don't build up and create some level of anxiety that I shouldn't have because I wasn't staying in front of my own purpose for the day.
That is such a great piece of advice, Bobby, because I find in life people say, oh, this emergency happened or my kid got hurt or whatever it might be, and you don't plan ahead. You don't want to be stuck in the possibilities of what could go wrong in your life or in your business, but to just have a plan. Okay, if this happens, what's our bug out plan? It keeps you feeling, okay, when something happens, you're not like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? You already have a plan in place.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I found helpful for myself and my flight instructor was really harped on me about is really always using a checklist. It was very important for him. He came from corporate big leagues and always found the checklist very important because you can think, I checked everything, and did you really check everything? So actually applying that to my life has been helpful, using checklists, or as people might call them, lists, to go over like, what is your daily plan for today? And so just like what you were saying, it's kind of staying ahead of your airplane of life.
That's right.
So tell me, now working with some of the people you've taken up, how have you helped them get over their fear of flying? What have you told them to help them kind of ease their fear of being in the aircraft?
Yep, I think there's really two big pieces that calm people's nerves or calm their anxiety that they have. Number one is every aircraft, including a 777, which could weigh up to almost 1,000,000 pounds. A 777 has something called maneuvering speed, and a Cessna has something called maneuvering speed. And maneuvering speed is a manufacturer design characteristic of an aircraft that means that the aircraft will stall, which means stop creating lift before it would break apart. And that maybe doesn't make sense to everyone without seeing a little bit more, hearing a little bit more. But an aircraft, you could, if you are at maneuvering speed in a Cessna, the POH, the pilot handbook or the pilot operating handbook says that you could make full deflections with ailerons, rudder, pull back as hard as you want to, push down as far as you want to, and the plane should not break, right? It's designed to not break. It's designed to stop creating lift and become almost inert in this 3D space. So I think a lot of people think that planes are going to break or the wings are just going to fall off. That was a lot of what I thought. And I think as I learned more about maneuvering speed and the weight characteristics of an aircraft, that started to calm the nerves a lot. And then if you think about another design characteristic, I mean, these are physicists that are building these aircrafts even in the late 40s, early 40s. They were very, very smart people. They created a certain type of stability. Every aircraft has some level of stability, and some are super, super stable. And the aircraft that we fly as trainers and that we fly across the country in are very, very stable. And that's intended so that they don't get out of coordination and cause problems. So in a Cessna, for example, the best thing to almost always do is just let go of everything, because it's designed to fly itself. And it really will take over and fly itself. It'll find a way to point the nose down at the ground. The center of gravity is at such a point where the nose will always fall forward. It's almost impossible to make one fall backwards. And it's called stability. But then a fighter jet is not very stable, and that's intended so that the fighter jet can make the turns and stop and do the things that a fighter jet needs to do in a dogfight. But it's not as stable. So a fighter jet would have less stability than something like a Cessna. So between the two, the stability between a trainer and the fact that maneuvering speed would prevent them from just breaking apart in all circumstances for the most part, I think people get real comfortable. And then I guess the last thing is, if you let them steer or let them have control for a little while, they start to realize what is making the plane move in this three-dimensional space. And they realize it's not just going to drop. It can't just drop. And I think people start getting confidence, even from, I know people that are afraid to fly commercially that have flown with me in smaller single engine aircraft and have overcome their fears somewhat, that they believe that even in a bigger plane that they're a lot safer than they thought they were before. And I guess I just went to an air show for the first time, which is, again, kind of quirky, but those aircraft that are doing acrobatics, they're designed to take 10x the force of gravity before they would have any structural damage. So that is impossible for those aircraft to even create that much load on their wings. So again, even those acrobatic aircraft are intended to not fall apart with tremendous amounts of load. So you're talking 10 G's of force. The plane's wings still would stay intact and move that plane in the right direction. So those things all combined, I think, make people become comfortable with the thought of flying in an aircraft.
Yeah, no, I totally get you. That was my thought as a child flying in big commercial liners. Oh my gosh, how is this not falling out of the sky? It should not be up here. But then when you begin to learn, take flying lessons, you also take ground instruction while you're taking flying lessons, it will begin to tell you how it actually stays up there. It's not magic. It is a science, and it actually is pretty amazing. And yeah, just what you were saying about my teacher was saying, hey, just let go of the controls in the Cessna. Look, see, it doesn't fall just magically out of the sky. It keeps flying. It's designed that way. And you're right, bit by bit, as you experience these things, you begin to say, okay, this is safe. Now, let's talk about some of the things people hear, because they'll say, well, then why is there reports of planes falling out of the sky sometimes, or having accidents? And it's really a matter sometimes of mistakes usually done by the pilot. And I don't know about you, but for me, it seems often it's complacency. A pilot will know better and sometimes make errors, and the errors kind of pile up.
Yep. It's normally a chain of events. It's normally not one thing that causes an accident to happen, but it's a series of events. We normally reference it as Swiss cheese, and it's all those holes. If you poured water on Swiss cheese, ultimately the water would find its way through the other side, because there is going to be a way to get through it, although it's very difficult. and impossible to see through it, but water will find its way through. I think that's where aircraft accidents normally occur. And on my podcast, we always talk about people don't plan on running out of fuel, and fuel is so important in aviation. You have to have fuel. If you can't, the fuel will run without electricity, but the engine will not run without fuel. And so no one that's ever ran out of gas or has had a fuel starvation incident, meaning they've let the fuel out one tank go and not the other tank while there was still fuel in it. Mm-hmm. None of them woke up that morning and said, I'm going to run out of gas today. They all had a plan to not run out of gas, but they made some mistake, or they made some calculation error, or they had some, this won't happen to me thought kind of thing happen that made them continue on when they probably shouldn't have continued on. And those probably can string back to 2 or 3 decisions that caused that. But no one intends for these things to happen, but we are human. We are flawed by design in some respects. And those accidents do happen. But I can tell you, every time I hear about something and my wife panics and my friends all text me and make sure that wasn't me that was involved, it's normally a very simple explanation on a number of things that went awry, that almost always relates back to human error.
Yeah. And the same goes with driving. I've been there where you're like, well, I'll fill this tank. I know it's on its last little digit there, but I've got enough miles here and I don't want to stop right now, and I'll wait. And before you know it, you're puttering out, and you have to kind of, without engine power, move your car over to the side, which you can do, move over to a shoulder in a car, but and then try to look for gas somehow. But in the air, not quite so easy. So we make the same errors in life and in our cars and stuff like that. It's just that with the flying, as we started out saying, is you just got to plan ahead to deflect those errors. But it's been such a great pleasure talking with you today, Bobby. Where can everyone get in touch with you in the flight school, learn to fly today if they're near Spring, Texas?
Yep. I would encourage everyone to check out unitedflight.com. That's where all things are related to the flight school. More on a personal level, or if you want to get in touch with me, I would point everyone towards my podcast. It's called Behind the Prop. You can find us on the web at behindtheprop.com. And if you want to find me, I'm sure you can find me on social media. If you search for Bobby Doss, there's some race car guy in Kentucky, and then there's me. So I'm sure you'll find me. I'm not a race car guy, so I'm easy to find.
Yeah, I love that you say that, Behind the Prop. I love the title of your podcast. Now, if you are also having some trainings during the summer, are you doing any upcoming events at the flight school?
Yep. So we do a free course every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. The holidays might impact that schedule a little itty bitty bit, but we continue to host a free course in person and via Zoom. So no matter where you're listening to this show, go to unitedflight.com/courses and feel free to sign up for any of those courses. They're 100% free. Very rarely we will do something on the weekend that has a small cost to it, but those will be in person only. And I encourage everybody to go check that out. That's sort of my way of paying it forward to future aviators.
Yeah. And listen, it's never too late. Bobby got started just a couple of years ago, and now look at him. He's the owner of a flight school and a accomplished pilot. So anyone listening in, ever had that desire to fly? Never too late. Go and get it. Thank you, Bobby Doss, for coming to our 10th annual Aviation Month on Savvy Broadcasting.
Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share this episode. To listen to more savvy episodes and savvy biz tips, go to www.lifeunscriptedradio.com. To find out about our paid sponsorship opportunities or how to become a guest, email Christina at lifeunscriptedradio.com.